Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hi, this is Tim Donner with another thrill-packed episode of LNTV. If I knew you were coming, I would have baked a cake. Or maybe not. The Supreme Court has now ruled on the famous, closely watched gay wedding cake case, and it appears to be a resounding victory for religious liberty. Here to discuss the ruling and what it means going forward is LibertyNation.com Legal Affairs Director and Editor Scott Cosenza. And Scott, tell us all about Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission.
Tim, I think it might be a bit premature to call this a big win for religious liberty. What we had here is a case where the cake baker himself declined to bake a cake for a gay wedding. And there's no dispute that he had deeply held sincere religious beliefs that prevented him from doing so. The couple in this instance decided that that was not okay with them, and they tried to make the government force this baker, Mr. Phillips of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Colorado, to go ahead and bake a cake for them anyway. So he appeals and says, this is my First Amendment right to decline to bake, just like compelled speech is equally prohibited as is the protection to say what one wishes to say. Now, is this compelled speech? Well, the Supreme Court kind of took a side out, I think, on this issue. The ruling was 7-2, but it would be a mistake, Tim, I think, to think that that indicated this robust belief in the argument for freedom of association. And the reason why is that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, when they were making a ruling on this case,
Could be
they
either.
used, right, they acted in a fashion that was bigoted and discriminatory against Mr. Phillips. As we know, unfortunately, bigotry against conservative Christians seems like one of the last refuges where it's allowed in this country. And the Supreme Court in this case said that because that's the way the commission and Colorado proceeded in this bigoted fashion, in this discriminatory fashion, that therefore the baker wins. And so what they didn't say, and people on both the right and the left, I think, Tim, were hoping for what we call a bright line ruling in this case, that people are allowed to discriminate against X, Y, or Z, in this case, homosexual couples, if they are creatively engaged in commercial activity, as this baker is. It's a commercial endeavor, which is to say it's for sale, but it's also creative. He uses his own designs and so forth in order to create his cakes.
Well, as you say, the court did not issue a definitive ruling on the circumstances under which people can seek exemptions from anti-discrimination laws based on their religious views. So what is likely to be the effect of this enormously watched and important Supreme Court ruling going forward?
Well, if we get into the weeds a little bit, Tim, Justice Kennedy was the author of the court's decision in this case. It was a 7-2 case, so at least 7 of the justices agreed with the outcome, which is to say the cake need not be made and he need not be fined for refusing to make it. Only Justices Sotomayor and Ginsburg thought that it was appropriate to use the power of the state to compel this man to bake and decorate a cake or crush him through fines and seizures, which is what I guess the gay activist community wanted to happen to this Christian baker. But of the 7 remaining justices, that is a bit of a tricky situation. We don't yet know if there was a clean case, which is to say a case whereby the state actually dotted its I's and crossed its T's and still ruled in favor of the gay couple, whether they would be allowed, they being the baker, would be allowed an exemption from that law religiously. Based on the opinions written separately by Justice Thomas and Gorsuch and joined by Alito, I think that those 3 justices would likely rule that the baker has the freedom of conscience. And in fact, Justice Thomas wrote separately to state that fact. But whether Kennedy would sign on, whether Roberts would sign on to that opinion, we just don't know. And I think we're going to have to wait and see for another freedom of commercial association or First Amendment rights, as you please, case with similar facts but one where the state has, again, dotted its I's and crosses its T's before we know the answer.
Now, you've said we shouldn't place too much importance on the 7-2 vote, but certainly would we not have expected all the leftist justices to dissent and create the usual 5-4 vote on this kind of explosively controversial issue?
Tim, this case, if it were to go the other way with a bright line ruling, would be so damaging and just a body blow to the right to freedom of association that I would hope that even some of those justices, like Justice Kennedy, who doesn't have a reputation as being a conservative on the court, more of a swing, would go that way. We have Justice Kagan, who also joined the majority here. So it's not a strictly left-right divide. Only those radicals like Sotomayor and Ginsburg appear to be dug into that position.
So this is all about religious liberty. So, Scott, what do you make of a former commissioner for the Colorado Civil Rights Commission arguing that freedom of religion and religion itself has been used to justify all kinds of discrimination throughout history, whether it be slavery, whether it be the Holocaust? That's a direct quote. What do you make of that statement and the sentiment behind it?
Well, the statement is true. Religion has been used to justify those things and all manner of other horrible things. That has no bearing, though, on whether Mr. Phillips must be compelled by the state of Colorado to bake a cake for this gay couple. Let's recall, Tim, this is the issue at stake. Should the citizens of Colorado throw Mr. Phillips in a cage because he doesn't want to bake a cake for this couple? I mean, that's what we're really talking about, whether the violence the state has a monopoly grant on violence. That's what that's sort of the contract we have in civil society today, and certain parties want the state to use that violence in order to make Phillips succumb to the whims and wishes of this couple. And I think that is a serious problem, and I'm certainly glad that it went the other way.
All right, thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.
And you can see more about Scott's writing as as we call him, our legal affairs editor, also illegal affairs editor, on LibertyNation.com. I'm Tim Donner, and this is LNTV.
Liberty Nation. News and commentary, minus the propaganda. LibertyNation.com.